I ordered a pizza on a quiet evening, expecting grease-stained boxes and small talk. What arrived instead was a moment that cracked open my assumptions, stirred old memories, and changed how I see connection, age, and kindness. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and write in the comments which city you are listening from. This is very important for us. And now, enjoy listening. I thought it would be a normal pizza delivery. That's honestly how the night began, with nothing remarkable planned and no expectation that anything in my life was about to shift, even slightly. It was one of those evenings where the house feels too quiet, even though you're used to living alone. The kind of quiet that hums in your ears once the sun sets and the television becomes more of a companion than entertainment. I had kicked off my shoes by the door, loosened the knot of my hair, and decided that cooking for one just wasn't worth the effort. Pizza felt easy, familiar, predictable. I'm Jessica, 40 years old, divorced, settled into a small but comfortable home in a neighborhood that's been aging right along with me. The streets are lined with old oak trees and memories. Kids used to ride bikes here. Now it's mostly dog walkers and porch lights flicking on at dusk. I'd lived here long enough to stop noticing most things. That night, I didn't expect to notice anything at all. When I placed the order, I barely glanced at the delivery estimate. 30 minutes. Fine. I poured myself a glass of water, stood by the kitchen window, and watched the sky darken into a deep, patient blue. There was a faint breeze coming through the cracked window, carrying the smell of cut grass and something floral from a neighbor's yard. The knock came right on time, 3 soft taps, not rushed, not careless. I remember thinking that was odd how gentle it sounded. I opened the door expecting a young guy with a baseball cap and a phone in his hand, already halfway back to his car. Instead, there stood an elderly man, holding the pizza box carefully, as if it contained something fragile. He was tall but slightly stooped, with silver hair combed neatly back and kind, observant eyes that seemed to take in the whole world without judgment. "Good evening," he said, his voice warm and steady. "Jessica?" "Yes," I replied, a little surprised. "That's me." "I'm David," he said, offering a small smile. "Your pizza." For a moment, neither of us moved. The porch light cast a soft glow over his face, highlighting lines that spoke of years lived fully. He wasn't frail, just seasoned, grounded. There was something calming about him standing there, unhurried, as if time wasn't pressing down on him the way it often did on me. I stepped aside to let him hand me the box. Our fingers brushed briefly, and I felt a strange little jolt, not of attraction exactly, but recognition. As if something unspoken had passed between us in that simple contact. "Smells wonderful," he said, nodding toward the box. "They did a good job tonight." "I hope so," I laughed softly. "It's been one of those days." He met my eyes then, really met them. "Those days have a way of finding us," he said. "May I?" He gestured toward the porch, as if asking permission to linger for a second longer. Normally, I might have felt uncomfortable, cautious, but something about David made the moment feel safe. "Of course," I said, stepping back just enough to keep the door open. We stood there for a beat, the evening settling around us. A car passed in the distance. Somewhere, a dog barked. David adjusted his grip on the empty thermal bag at his side. "I don't usually do deliveries," he said almost apologetically. "I help out at the shop a few nights a week. Keeps me moving, keeps me useful." I nodded, understanding more than he probably knew. "I get that." He smiled again, softer this time. "Well, enjoy your dinner, Jessica, and take care of yourself." "You too, David," I replied. As I closed the door, I leaned my back against it, heart beating a little faster than before. I told myself it was nothing, just a pleasant interaction, just a kind man doing his job. But as I carried the pizza to the kitchen and opened the box, the smell filling the room, I realized the quiet felt different now, less heavy, as if something had been stirred awake inside me. I didn't know it yet, But that brief exchange on my porch was only the beginning. I tried to tell myself it was just a moment. A nice, human moment, the kind you don't get often enough anymore. I sat at my small dining table, the pizza box open, steam rising, but my appetite had faded into the background. I kept replaying the sound of David's voice, the way he didn't rush, the way he looked at me like I was fully there, not just another door on his route. I shook my head at myself and took a bite. It tasted fine, comforting, normal. I turned on the television for background noise, but I wasn't really watching. My thoughts kept drifting back to the porch light, to the calm in his expression, to the unexpected warmth I'd felt when our fingers touched. The next day passed quietly. Work emails, a grocery run, a phone call with my sister that lasted too long and said too little. By evening, the house felt quiet again, that same familiar hum. I almost cooked, almost. Then I laughed softly at myself and picked up my phone. I didn't plan it, not consciously. I told myself it was coincidence, convenience, nothing more. I ordered pizza again. When the knock came, my heart answered before my mind did. The same 3 gentle taps. I opened the door, and there he was. David looked slightly surprised, then amused. "Well," he said, smiling wider this time. "Good evening again, Jessica." "Good evening," I replied, feeling a little foolish and a little pleased. "Looks like I'm developing a habit." "Nothing wrong with habits," he said. "They give shape to our days." He handed me the box, and this time our fingers lingered just a second longer. Not accidental, not inappropriate, just acknowledged. "I was hoping it might be you," I admitted before I could stop myself. He raised his eyebrows gently, not teasing. "I'm glad," he said simply. We stood there again, the porch light doing its quiet work. I noticed details I'd missed the night before. The faint scent of aftershave, clean and understated. The way his hands bore the marks of work and time. The steadiness in his posture, even with the slight bend of age. "Would you like to sit for a moment?" I asked, surprising both of us. "I mean, if you're allowed. I don't want to get you in trouble." He chuckled softly. "I think I can spare a few minutes." I brought out 2 folding chairs from the hallway closet, and we sat on the porch, the night wrapping around us like an old quilt. Crickets sang. A breeze stirred the leaves overhead. We talked. About nothing at first. The weather. The neighborhood. Then about more. He told me he was 72, widowed for several years now. That delivering pizzas wasn't about the money, but about staying connected to people. "You can go days without really being seen," he said, looking out into the dark street. "This helps." I felt that land somewhere deep. "I understand that," I said quietly. I told him about my divorce, how life had narrowed in ways I hadn't expected. How independence can feel empowering and lonely at the same time. He listened without interrupting, without offering solutions, just listening. That alone felt intimate. Time passed without either of us noticing. Eventually he stood, adjusting his jacket. "I should go," he said, "but I'm glad we talked." "Me too," I said, meaning it more than I'd meant most things lately. Before he left, he paused. "I'll be working again tomorrow night," he said, not quite a question. I smiled. "I might get hungry." He laughed, a warm, genuine sound, and gave a small nod before walking down the steps. After he left, I didn't turn on the television. I sat at the table, pizza untouched, feeling something open inside me. Not desire in the way people often mean it. Something steadier. Like a door unlatched after being closed for years. Over the next week, our pattern formed naturally. Sometimes I ordered pizza. Sometimes I didn't. Sometimes David came by anyway, just to check in, standing on the porch and talking for a few minutes. No pressure, no expectation. Our conversations deepened. We talked about aging, about regrets that soften with time, about joys that surprise you when you stop looking for them. He spoke of his late wife with tenderness, not sorrow. I spoke of learning who I was again after years of compromise. There was tension, yes, but it was quiet, respectful. a shared awareness that something meaningful was growing, something neither of us wanted to rush or define too quickly. One evening, as we sat side by side watching the sky fade, David turned to me and said, "You know, Jessica, it's been a long time since I've felt this, present." I felt it too. And in that moment, I realized this was no longer just about pizza or chance meetings or easing loneliness. It was about connection, about choosing to be open even when it feels risky. I didn't know where it would lead, but for the first time in a long while, I was willing to find out. The days that followed were a slow unfolding, the kind of rhythm that feels like it has always been meant to exist. David and I had settled into our unspoken routine, the quiet comfort of knowing the other would be there without expectation, without obligation. Evenings that had once been filled with the low hum of television and the clatter of an empty house now carried the gentle cadence of conversation, laughter, and moments of stillness that didn't feel lonely anymore. That night, I remember the wind had picked up, tugging at the curtains in my living room. I had just finished tidying the kitchen after making tea when I heard the familiar, gentle tap at the door. I opened it to find David standing there, holding not a pizza box this time, but a small paper bag with a bottle of wine peeking out. "I thought we might enjoy something a little different tonight," he said, his eyes glinting with a quiet amusement. "If that's all right." I felt a smile tug at my lips. "It's more than all right," I said, stepping aside to let him in. We sat at the dining table, wine poured into glasses, the soft glow of the lamp casting gentle shadows across his face. I noticed the way the lines at the corners of his eyes softened in the lamplight, how his hands, though aged, moved with a careful grace. There was a steady presence about him that made the room feel warmer, more alive. We spoke of everything and nothing. Music we'd loved, books that had stayed with us long after we'd read them, childhood memories that seemed distant but vivid when spoken aloud. I found myself laughing more than I had in months, my heart light in a way that surprised me. At one point, David leaned back in his chair and studied me with an expression that was both thoughtful and tender. "Jessica," he said quietly, "do you ever feel like life keeps nudging us toward certain people, whether we're ready or not?" I considered the question, swirling the wine in my glass. "I think it does," I admitted. "Sometimes it's subtle. Sometimes it hits you all at once, and you don't know how to respond." He nodded, a quiet understanding settling between us. There was no need to fill the space with more words. The connection had grown too real to be ignored, yet neither of us felt the need to rush or define it too quickly. As the evening wore on, we moved to the living room, settling into the couch with our glasses of wine. A fire flickered in the hearth, casting warmth over the room and adding to the sense of intimacy that had been quietly building between us. We shared small touches, a hand brushing against another accidentally, a glance that lingered longer than usual, but always with the mutual respect that had defined our interactions from the start. I felt a strange mixture of anticipation and calm, a tension that wasn't uncomfortable but alive with possibility. David reached over, resting his hand lightly over mine. "I didn't expect this, you know," he said softly. "I didn't expect to find someone who makes the quiet feel so full." I squeezed his hand gently, my heart swelling with something I hadn't realized I'd been missing. "Neither did I replied. "And yet, here we are." We talked long into the night, about our pasts, our fears, and the ways we'd both learned to navigate life's disappointments. In David, I saw someone who had lived fully, who carried his years not as a weight, but as a quiet strength. And in him, I felt seen in a way that had been rare in my own life, noticed, understood, and valued. Eventually, the fire dwindled to embers, and the night had grown deep. David rose to leave, but this time, there was a pause before he stepped away from the door. He looked at me with a soft intensity, and I realized that the bond between us had evolved from chance acquaintance into something rare and fragile, something worth protecting. "I'll see you soon, Jessica," he said, his voice low and steady. "Yes," I replied, the word carrying more weight than I could have imagined. Soon. After he left, I lingered in the living room, staring at the fire's remnants. I felt a shift inside me, a sense of possibility that I hadn't allowed myself to embrace in years. For the first time in a long while, I felt hope, not the frantic hope of longing, but the quiet, steady hope of something meaningful beginning to take shape. That night, I went to bed with a sense of anticipation, but also a sense of peace. David's presence had become a mirror, reflecting not just who I was, but who I might become if I allowed myself to trust again. And deep down, I knew that whatever was happening between us, it was built on more than chance encounters or fleeting attraction. It was built on respect, on understanding, on a shared recognition that connection, true, tender connection, could arrive at any age, often when you least expect it. The following days carried that same gentle rhythm. Our conversations continued, each one peeling back layers we hadn't shown to anyone else. Sometimes it was playful, sometimes reflective, but always sincere. And as I went about my daily life, I noticed the subtle changes within me. The lighter step, the increased curiosity about people around me, the willingness to be present without judgment or fear. David had become a part of my evenings, yes, but also a part of my perspective, a reminder that life could surprise you, and that emotional intimacy could arrive in forms that didn't always follow the rules. And I found myself looking forward to each visit, not just for the conversation or the company, but for the quiet reassurance that connection, respect, and shared laughter could be just as nourishing as any meal. I realized then that the simple act of someone knocking on my door had opened something in me I hadn't known was closed. And for the first time in a long while, I felt ready to let it stay open. The days turned into weeks, and our connection with David settled into a comforting, natural rhythm. The novelty of our first encounters had faded, but the warmth, the ease, and the intimacy of our time together had only deepened. I noticed myself looking forward to the evenings, not just for the pizza, though sometimes it was delicious, but for the chance to share the quiet, reflective moments with him. That night, the sky was painted in shades of purple and gold, a soft twilight that seemed almost intentional, as if the universe had paused to create the perfect backdrop. I was setting the table when I heard the gentle tap at the door. My heart lifted automatically. I opened it to find David standing there, holding a small bouquet of wildflowers. "For you," he said simply, his eyes meeting mine with a warmth that made my chest tighten. "They're beautiful," I whispered, touched more than I could express. I took them from him, noticing the care with which he had chosen each flower. "Thank you, David." He smiled softly and stepped onto the porch. There was a quiet gravity to his presence tonight, a sense that something unspoken had shifted between us. We carried the flowers into the living room and placed them in a vase, the colors vivid against the soft glow of the lamp. We sat together, our chairs close, sharing stories that spanned decades. He told me about trips he had taken with his late wife, the small adventures that had meant everything to them. I shared memories of my own travels, the mistakes, the triumphs, the moments that had shaped me. There was a tender honesty in our conversation, a willingness to reveal ourselves without fear of judgment. As the night deepened, the room felt smaller, more intimate. The fire flickered low in the hearth, casting golden shadows that danced on the walls. Our hands brushed once, then again, and this time we didn't pull away. Instead, we let the contact linger, a silent acknowledgement of the bond we had formed. "I feel alive," David said quietly, his voice barely above the whisper of the wind outside. "More alive than I have in years." I reached for his hand, squeezing it gently. "I feel the same way," I admitted. "It's strange, isn't it? How life can surprise you when you least expect it." He nodded, his eyes holding a mixture of emotion and calm understanding. "Strange, yes, but wonderful too." There was a pause, filled only by the soft crackle of the fire and the distant hum of the neighborhood settling into the night. I realized then that our connection had moved beyond companionship. It was something deeper, a mutual recognition of the fragility and beauty of life. It wasn't about urgency or desire. It was about presence, understanding, and the quiet thrill of knowing someone sees you, truly sees you. We leaned back, letting our hands rest together, and talked about what we had learned from our lives. He spoke of love lost and found in unexpected ways, of grief and healing, of the lessons that age had taught him. I shared my own reflections, the ways I had rediscovered myself after years of compromise, the fears I still carried, and the hopes I dared to nurture. Time slipped by unnoticed. When David finally rose to leave, the night had grown late, and the air outside was crisp. I walked him to the door, feeling a mixture of reluctance and gratitude. "Thank you for tonight," I said softly, my hand lingering on his arm. "For everything," he replied. His eyes held mine with an intensity that was steady, kind, and reassuring. "I'll see you soon, Jessica." "Yes," I whispered, the word carrying more weight than any of our previous conversations. "Soon." As he walked down the steps and disappeared into the quiet street, I felt a profound sense of gratitude. Not just for David, but for the unexpected, tender connection that had entered my life. It was a reminder that life's most meaningful experiences often arrive when we are open to them, when we allow ourselves to trust and to feel. I returned to my living room, sitting quietly by the fading embers of the fire. The house felt alive in a way it hadn't before, filled with the echoes of laughter, conversation, and the gentle brush of hands. I realized that I had grown, that I had allowed myself to step into vulnerability and connection without fear. And in that growth, I had found something rare and precious: the quiet assurance that meaningful companionship can bloom at any age, in the most unexpected ways. In the weeks that followed, our evenings continued with the same gentle rhythm: conversations, shared stories, quiet moments of presence. There was no rush, no pressure, only the steady unfolding of trust, respect, and mutual care. And with each meeting, each laugh, each touch, I discovered a deeper understanding of what it meant to connect with another soul, to honor their experiences, and to embrace the fullness of one's own. I thought it would be a normal pizza delivery, nothing more, but David's knock at my door had become so much more than that. It had become the beginning of an unexpected journey of emotional intimacy, personal growth, and shared joy. A journey that reminded me that life, at any age, still holds moments of wonder, warmth, and human connection, moments that can transform an ordinary evening into something unforgettable. Sitting there, I felt content, grateful, and alive, knowing that the quiet, tender bond I had discovered with David would remain a cherished part of my life, shaping the way I approached love, friendship, and the simple beauty of being seen. And in that, I found peace.